Hey friends, thanks so much for joining me again today. This is really a continuation of episode 3. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you may want to go back. This one will make more sense. This episode is twofold. Number 1, I'd like you to think about why you feel the need to go to a church to be close to God. Is it because you like the music? The people? The sermon? Does it make you feel at peace? Do you get energized when you leave that space? Maybe you go because you've always gone, or because that's what your peers do. If you go to a church now or have in the past, you've probably given money to that organization. Do you know where that money is going? Have you ever thought about it? Churches can only exist and operate by the donations of its people. Aside from a few staff members, maybe an annual budget meeting on a Wednesday night, the actual finances of a church are rarely discussed. Number 2, I'd like you to think about other possibilities of spiritual connection. As mentioned in episode 3, I was abruptly removed from the church because of my sexuality. I was forced to reexamine my faith and how it would be able to be present in my life again. I believe that I went through a grieving process in a way. When I got on the other side of the shock, denial, bargaining, anger, guilt, depression, and finally acceptance, I found that there is a whole world outside the narrow teachings of the church. I also found an authenticity in people who were not burdened down by the dogma of needing a savior and the reminder of being a perpetual sinner. Since the bombshell episode 3 dropped last week, I have been overwhelmed with such love and support. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to listen and digest what I had to say. At the point of this recording a few days later, I'm happy to report that I have not received a single negative phone call, text, email, or otherwise in response to my podcast. For those of you who reached out to me with your own story, I would be honored if you'd be willing to share it with our listeners. I'm blown away with the things that I've heard, and I know you guys will be too. When we share our own stories, it strengthens others to come out of the shadows and discover their own courage. None of us are alone, but it can sometimes feel that way, particularly if your story involves an event or series of events that are kept in secret places. But sharing comes with risk. No one wants to admit that a person of faith has harmed them. It feels like you're going up against God himself or herself. We tend to put these leaders up on pedestals where they don't belong. They're just humans. It's our upbringing and ingrained expectation that fuels these undeserving elevations. My experience with church staff allowed me to see the wizard or wizards behind the curtain. I saw how the business of being a Baptist was conducted. I saw them launch huge building campaigns to acquire land to increase their empire. I saw preferential treatment and more access to leadership for those who made larger donations. I saw how one female and dedicated staff member was demoted to make way for a family member of church leadership. I saw how skilled employees, after a lifetime of dedication, were fired to bring in younger, lower-paid staff who didn't have a clue what they were doing. Others, after building huge satellite campuses on their back, had to fight for a couple months' severance before they were shown the door. This is where your hard-earned money goes when you donate to some church organizations. Personally, I would much rather help a friend or neighbor in need. I have heard many church members comparing their church to a hospital, filled with sick people who are seeking healing. They meant that as a defense to excuse unkind behaviors of some of its parishioners. I would have to agree with this comparison, all the way down to the massive monetary profits of both institutions. And the much greater point, does this look like anything that resembles Jesus' work here on earth? He was humble and hung out with hookers and the homeless. He showed the least of us that they were loved, and he didn't need a building or a Bible to do so. He didn't qualify anyone for his attention, and he wasn't concerned with social status. He was pure love. Did you know the Bible wasn't even around when Jesus was on earth? In fact, the first version didn't come out until 400 years after he died. Think about that. This compilation of books that Christians, aka followers of Christ, stake their entire claim to faith on, wasn't even written until 400 years later. Do you know how much can get misrepresented in 400 years? Also, the book was originally called the Canon. How very interesting and fortuitous. I believe this collection of books has been translated so many times over the last few thousand years that it has truly become a weapon of mass misinterpretation. First named a canon, then when I learned of it as a child, we were told it was a sword. Having had it used against me, I can tell you that it most certainly has lived up to its weaponry name. How many of you actually knew these facts? It certainly wasn't taught to me. I had to do my own digging back when I was desperately trying to resolve my faith with my sexuality. The dilemma that I was no longer lovable by God in the way that I was created was the crux of my turning point towards peace. So far, I've talked a little bit about what I perceive as the unraveling. What does the untamed aspect look like? My brain goes to nature. Here in Clearwater, Florida, we are blessed with some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. We have amazing parks and recreational areas. We have the Pinellas Trail that goes from one end of the county to the other. Just up the road a couple miles in Dunedin, we have Honeymoon Island State Park, which is always on some Best Beach magazine cover. Yes, it is incredibly populated, but if you can't find a connection to the divine around here, you aren't trying. What does it look like in your area? What outdoor spots have you seen that inspire you? Vincent van Gogh once said, "If you truly love nature, you will find beauty everywhere." So why do we need a building at all? Why do we need to operate in these huge environments with staff members with titles like Director of Facilities and Lead Pastor of Administration? I'll give you a few moments to think about that. We are social creatures, so I get it. We need that connection to other humans, and the building makes it much easier and more comfortable to meet. A building also provides a location that is agreed upon to gather. That's another big plus. Agreeing on locations within groups can get ugly. But what if we looked at this altogether differently, connecting in smaller, more intimate settings? Let's look at how Christ handled his time here on earth. Looks to be pretty low budget. Rabbi Joshua Garraway, a professor of early Christianity and the Second Commonwealth at Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles, states this: "I imagine the ministry function at a subsistence level. Jesus and his disciples walked, wore what they had, slept outside or stayed in friends' homes. They ate what they caught or what others shared. I venture to guess that begging and hospitality will have sufficed to meet the basic needs of Jesus and the companions with whom he traveled," Garraway said. Walked everywhere, ate what they caught, and slept outside or stayed with friends. I understand this may not be realistic or safe in today's time, but this is a far cry from the monumental salaries in megachurches of today. Just as a comparison to other religious leaders, here are some statistics I've found. The average salary of a Buddhist monk is $28,750 a year. A Hindu priest can expect to earn a few thousand more a year at $30,000 annually. Both usually top out around $60,000 a year at the end of their careers. The Dalai Lama, probably the most famous Buddhist monk in the world, has an estimated net worth of $150 million. But guess what? As a strict Buddhist monk, Dalai Lama has nothing to do with his earnings and net worth. All of Dalai Lama's earnings go to his charitable works. That sounds more like catching what you eat and staying with friends to me. The starting base salary of a Baptist preacher is $46,000 a year, and the top earners are in the hundreds of millions per year. If you took the earnings of Pat Robertson, Kenneth Copeland, and Joel Osteen, no human would go hungry for a long, long time. Their combined annual salaries are nearing $1 billion per year. That's B with a billion every year. The reframing for me is finding connections with nature and with connecting with people who are open and encouraging. I am an extrovert, meaning that I get my energy from people. I especially prefer to engage in controversial topics with those who have an open mind and will also challenge my own thoughts and beliefs. Show me a new perspective through your lens, and I'm all in. Guys, if you stay in the echo chamber of the church walls, you will most likely get stuck and die there and not get to experience and enjoy all that this one life has to offer. Do you really want to fight to the relationship death over something that is uncertain to either one of us? Is it worth it? Open yourself up, even if it's just the possibility of another way. I promise it's not as scary as you think. Find the right people to grow with. Get rid of or limit those people in your life who drain you. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say drain, observe the way you feel while in or after leaving someone's presence. While some people have calming, soothing energy, others cause us to feel anxious and on edge. Also, observe your physical body. Are you relaxed or tense? Becoming aware of these feelings and energies will help you grow tremendously. That's it for today. I know that I dropped a lot on you, and I'm so grateful that you stayed with me. Listen again if you want. Share it with friends, and feel free to reach out to me. My email is info@the-co-lab.com, or you can reach me on Facebook or Instagram. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. It only takes a few seconds, and it helps me get this new message of hope and healing to the masses. As of the recording of this podcast, we already have listeners in 8 countries. Some of you have shared in the comments, and I am in awe of your courage. Thank you. Now let's take a big, peaceful breath in. Hold it. And a big, peaceful breath out. Repeat if necessary. Much love to you all.